Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I am Dr. Wisdom Paul Uchechukwu Esegwe, the Purpose Doctor. I'm live now for another beautiful episode of Drug Abuse Discourse. And today is a national emergency, and I'm glad to let you know that Wisdom Class Drug Free Club has joined the war against drug abuse, and we are getting ready to shake everybody to put his hands on the deck. And today, I'm not going to do this discourse alone. I have a guest in the house, no other person but Dr. Igben O. Vincent Jr. He's a community health enthusiast and dedicated drug abuse advocate who is committed to raising awareness about the dangers of drug abuse and promoting a healthy lifestyle. Over the years as a medical practitioner, he has developed a deep understanding of the psychological and social factors that contribute to drug abuse, and his academic background enables him to approach the issues from an informed and empathic perspective. Dr. Igben's creativity shines through his advocacy work and his innovative and engaging mechanism of educating individuals and students about the consequences of drug abuse. From organizing awareness campaigns to hosting panel discussions, Dr. Igben ensures that his initiatives are both informative and enjoyable. Moreover, his friendly nature and approachable demeanor make him a go-to person for those seeking advice or support in dealing with drug-related issues. So, apart from this presentation, Dr. Igben is available for you to meet him if you are hooked for counseling for support. So, over to you, Dr. Vincent Igben. You are welcome.
So thank you very much for having me today on your program. Wisdom Class has done a lot with respect to substance abuse and trying to see how much it can contribute to the development of Nigeria through its advocacy and also its intervention by providing psychosocial support for drug abuse individuals and also going as far as even making treatment, paid treatment for some individuals that find themselves trapped in this bracket of substance abuse. However, today's discourse is centered around national epidemic of substance abuse in Nigeria. Well, we'll be following the outline, which is we'll have an introduction of the topic. We also have a current situation in Nigeria. What are the causes of substance abuse, the impact, solution, and also we'll entertain questions in your chat box, which you can drop. Then later on, we'll come up, pick it up, and respond to it. As a way of introduction, we need to understand that the scope of this discourse is going to cover around awareness, understanding, and actions that have previously been taken with respect to substance abuse in Nigeria, with a bid to doing one singular thing to stimulate a debate between ourselves and the community at large on the negative impact of substance abuse in terms of our socio-economic development. Now, suffice you all to know that there is a natural presumption that substance abuse actually started recently, especially because of the current surge that we have all witnessed. However, it informs us to know that substance abuse actually predates back to pre-colonial era. When we talk about the pre-colonial era, we mean the years before Nigeria gained independence. And during then, if we look carefully, studying the socio-cultural nature of man, you find that man has gradually evolved from a gatherer to a farmer, and part of the plant which he or she had planted for economic benefit includes intoxicants. And these crops as I then had more economic value, and some of them include tobacco, marijuana, and even the popular wine which we all know of. That is to tell you that the issue of substance abuse is not actually a thing of today, but something that has happened and keep on happening many years ago and up to date. However, if we look at the trend from our independence till this particular period, we would actually notice that there had actually been cases of increased substance abuse in our country, Nigeria. And part of it had been the realization that there was increased utilization of tobacco, alcohol, and other illicit drug after independence. And if we even go further, we'd even realize that there was an increased incidence of drug trafficking in the during the early post-independent period of our country, Nigeria. And that led the government to seek several intervention. And part of the intervention was creating the Nigerian Dangerous Drug Act, which was actually enacted in the year 1935 in response to this. And alongside also, we had the formation of the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency, NDLE, which was formed in 1989 and is still functional up to date. And most of us are aware of what NDLE is all about in our country, Nigeria. Then now, having talked about this, what drugs actually do these individuals abuse? Part of the drugs that they actually abuse entails one, the commonest that we all know, marijuana that had been there from time immemorial, then alcohol, and most recently we have the upsurge of other drugs such as Colorado, skunk, SK, loud, and even to an extent crack cocaine. And if we even look at the recent past, we talk about the upsurge of the drug Urumiri, which is a methamphetamine. This is to tell you that our young individuals in this country are in contact with these different type of drugs. Now, this gives us a very strong suggestion on the impact of substance abuse. Let us quickly interrogate the figure. Following a report by the United Nations Drug and Crime, UNODC, it was reported that Nigeria had a prevalence of 14.4%. Among this 14.4%, it was found that it was about 3 times higher than the average global rate, which is quite alarming. Among them include about 10.6 million individuals utilizing cannabis, about 4.6 utilizing opioid, which in the ranks of morphine, pentazocine, and tramadol most especially, and other drugs. In fact, there was even an incident that was raised, I think 3 point something million bottles of codeine that was even consumed in the northern region of the country, and that sparkled impacting the laws to regulate access to cough syrup. This is how much that this drug has gotten to our Nigerian populace. Now, let us now think of something. With the numbers of persons using this drug, what are the impact or the consequences of this drug on these various individuals? Suffice us to know that the range of individuals affected by substance abuse costs between 15 years to 64 years. And in every nation, that actually constitutes the independent productive group of that nation. So if we have this group of productive individuals utilizing substance abuse, then definitely we need to interrogate the impact of this substance abuse. The impact spans across health, social, economic, psychological, as well as educational impact. In terms of the health impact, they are at risk of cardiovascular disease and hypertension and its untoward complications. For intravenous drug users, while in the process of injecting themselves, they run the risk of acquiring blood-borne diseases such as HIV/AIDS, hepatitis, and any other infection that can be transmitted through blood. Even some of them run the risk of introducing bacteria from their skin into their blood, and at the end put them at risk of sepsis, DVT, and other infections. Now, what about the social consequences? In that, we are talking about how it affects the productivity of the nation. First and foremost, it suffices us to know that a drug addict definitely will not be able to hold together the central core of the nation, which is the family. So most of them are always at risk of having broken family home. And if we have a broken family home, then definitely our culture is becoming eroded because the family actually is the one that have to impact and inculcate that on the children and the forthcoming generation. Then what about unemployment? You agree with me that an unemployed individual would not be able to achieve his or her maximum potential. And again, that gives a negative impact on our society and on our economy. And also, most of them are usually homeless. Why is he homeless? They do not have economic power to procure the basic necessity. And as a result of that, they don't even have a family support. Then let's look at the consequences, the economic consequences. For those that are hoodwinked or hooked in substance abuse, they need to keep on procuring this drug because they are already addicted or hooked or dependent on it. In that case, money that could be utilized for other beneficial purposes will be used in procuring this drug. And as a result of that, you see the money is diverted in another direction. What about those that come down with complication? They need to be treated. And for they themselves to go and procure those services for the health facility, it entails them also expending their little finance. So at the end, you have the health impact. But again, you and I know that most individuals that usually take drugs, they have increased tendency for crime rate. So if you're able to curb this menace, you can see that it will be really, really beneficial to we as a nation. What about educational consequences? Suffice us to note that most drug abusers or the recent epidemic and surge of drug abusers are found within the secondary school and the tertiary institution. While we entertain the fact that you have juvenile delinquency and peer pressure and other impact, we agree again that this is the bedrock of the future. And if these guys are found within that bracket, then definitely our nation is at jeopardy because the future leaders are now being deviated from their core primary goal of social economic development of the nation. And what happens to them? Most of them do not continue or complete their education. Some of them drop out. Some of them even have poor grades for those that are able to sail through with their addiction and the academic rigor. What about the psychological impact? If you walk through the road, you see so many mentally unstable and mentally deranged individuals. And if you really take time to interrogate them, you'll find out that most of them were in one way or the other involved in substance abuse. However, we do not deny the fact that family background or family history is actually one of the strongest risk factors. However, environmental factor can be a precipitating factor for these mental background disorder to manifest. Having talked about this, there is also a high suicide rate because you look at the dependent circle and the mind of an addict, you find that when they cannot get the drug, what is the next thing they have to think of? How to commit suicide for those that get depressed because of dependence and others. That is to tell you that the negative impact of substance abuse is actually multifactorial and not necessarily picking a singular factor responsible. It means you can have somebody that have an interplay of all these consequences together and manifesting in one individual. So up next, what are the reasons that may make an individual to abuse substances? We might divide it into intrinsic factor, which has to do with the individual, and extrinsic factor, which has to do with the environment. One, for the intrinsic factor is some persons naturally have love for money, which you wouldn't blame them. You could see that our society has gradually moved from to the direction where people do not look at the productivity of an individual with respect to the finance. What do I mean by that? Nobody asks the question, how did he make his money or how did she make his money? Was it legitimate? Our society has gradually encouraged people from not questioning the legitimacy of acquiring wealth, and in turn mocking those who has legitimately acquired wealth. So those are part of the reason. The another reason is unemployment. For those that are not gainfully employed, in the Christian dictum is usually said, an idle mind is the devil's workshop. So when these guys are unemployed, what do? They go into alcohol, they go into different things, and before you look, they get hooked on it. But again, let us look at an extrinsic factor which has to do with legal and regulatory factor. We do not have stringent laws. As a result of that, there are smuggling of drugs through the borders into the nation, which has negative consequences because people now have easy access to this drug. What about penalties? Corruption had actually made some people not to face the consequences, and even when they are being caught, the penalties for drug traffickers and drug sellers are usually weak. Unlike the Asian countries where it is that it's a capital offense if one is found to have carried drug, be above play of intrinsic and extrinsic, which has to do with the family, the social factor. In this particular case, what is the value system in our family structure? This has a role of increasing the risk of individuals moving in this negative direction. As P.P. Briggs said, man has the tendency to flow towards the least part of resistance. And for this individual, due to lack of proper family structure, the least part of resistance is to go in the direction of substance abuse, which is not too nice. Then also peer pressure. What happens in terms of peer pressure? You see their mates actually taking the drug. So what next should they do? They get involved and hoodwinked in it. The social media influence. Let's look at our music industry, for instance. You could see somebody like Burna Boy all the time is always with a cigar. Whether it is propped for musical purpose, we cannot actually differentiate, and these actually have negative impact on the youth, believing that this is a process, it's a way of life, it's an identity of fulfillment, it's an identity of, in quote, the worry syndrome, it don't make up. So these are part of the things we need to entertain. Having said this, what had been the adopted strategy of the nation over this period in order to curb or limit the impact of substance abuse? Part of the initiative had been instituting the National Drug Control Master Plan, which was actually initiated in 1999. And this master plan actually rests on 4 pillars. These 4 pillars are supply, reduction of supply, and which means that there is a limit to the amount of influx of drugs that gets into the country. Then also reducing drug demand. In this case, sensitizing individuals on the negative impact and consequences of this drug. As a result of that, these well-informed individuals do not go to procure these medications. Then also access to controlled medicine for medical and scientific purpose, investing in research, and also creating regulations such that drugs that have this potential to be addictive do not have access to every individual, but are also available for research purposes. And also governors helping to coordinate the process between international, local, and also other NGOs. Now, having said this, what are the additional strategies that have been adopted? There are additional strategies that we can adopt in order to support the already existing strategies in the country. These strategies include strengthening the family and community structures. How do we do that? We can do that through our religious body. Our religious bodies actually have a long reach, and part of the reach is having to teach people morals and the need to live in the rightful path. That can go in the way of strengthening the community structure and also the family structure. Then what about enhancing school-based prevention program? Part of the initiative, when we talk about school-based initiative program, We talk about one, the formal and the informal. When we use the word compared to the four walls of the university, the four walls of the secondary school. So those sensitization programs can actually be instituted in school through JET Club and also other social groups. However, the informal modalities will entail programs like this, just like what Wisdom class actually do. An extension, not a direct four wall of the school, but also helping to educate people around the society on this untoward effect. The next is providing access to treatment and rehabilitation. Because having seen these individuals that are caught within the web of substance abuse, they need to be treated and rehabilitated. And if somebody who by chance come across this video can actually go across to his village and see what is the incidence of individuals that are involved in substance abuse and what can they do by providing a drug awareness center in their community. That will go a long way in making Nigeria a better place. Then also promoting research. Despite the fact that we know about the side effects, the consequences, there is still need to understand the scope of substance abuse problem. This include doing sociological experiments to find out how much. It's not just about doing epidemiological studies of prevalence and incidence. What is the actual social impact? What is the actual social burden? And how does this social burden translate to negative economic development? Once this information are robustly out, individuals will understand better the consequences of substance abuse. And through that level of awareness, they'll be able to further impact and deter any individual that wishes to embark on such journey. Then advocacy and public enlightenment reiterates the point of what we have just said again through Wisdom Class and any other NGO that's interested in curbing this social menace. Raise awareness on the dangers of this drug and also support existing group on substance abuse. Then collaboration with international bodies. Yes, we can never do it alone. So Nigeria, while in collaboration with international bodies, would have to see how they can adopt best global practice in order to prevent the surge of substance abuse. I will be stopping for now at this point, and in further series and engagement, we'll discuss on other dimension to substance abuse. If we have any question, we can drop it at the chat box, and whenever we come, we'll pick up these questions and respond to it accordingly. Once again, I want to thank Wisdom Class for having me in their program. They've done fantastic job in terms of educating and raising awareness, not only in Abraka community, not only in Delta State University, but in the whole of Delta State. So thank you very much, and thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Vixen Jr. But before we sign out, you can answer one or two questions from me. And my question is, first of all, I will thank you for a very well articulated presentation. And I think you should be going to work with the World Health Organization. As for me, I believe in individual efforts. Why did I take this position? Because global efforts have failed, national efforts have failed, and individuals are failing. But I don't want to fail. And I also know that you, Dr. Vincent Igben, don't want to fail. So together we can do something. What can me and you do? We have tried to raise a drug-free club, and it's our duty to galvanize this drug-free club into action. But in the failure of global mechanisms and national mechanisms, the task is in our hands. So what do you think we can do to get everybody's hands on deck?
So part of what we should do is first to support existing structure, which Wisdom Class has already been doing. Then secondly is to raise more awareness, beat our drums harder so that people can follow. Then also we can also adopt, let's use the strategy that these some of these social marketing system, informing an individual, and that individual informing another within the confines of our environment, and gradually we might be so shocked at how much this little effort can help in raising awareness. And once people are more aware, they will come to join the process. Then also establishing, just like you rightly said, establishing drug clubs, clubs that will help to sensitize the local environment. And while we are sensitizing the local environment, we look for local partners, because sometimes we need to drive this initiative through a local process, since the global mechanism seems not to have done very well. So that's my
Thank you.
own take.
Thank you for that line of thoughts. We shall do just that. Then my last question, Dr. Vincent Igben Jr. Are you ready to declare a state of emergency against drug abuse and wage a war? You know that any war against drug is a let me say a very risky one. It must be sacrificial. So are you ready?
The answer is yes. Just like I have always lived my life in that direction, believing in the words of Mother Teresa, which says, service to humanity is the ultimate price we pay for the space we occupy on earth. And I'm always 100% ready for anything that has to do with service to mankind and evolution of our country, Nigeria, for the betterment of all. So I am ready and always ready.
Thank
Thank you.
you very much, Dr. Vincent Igbe, for being part of this drug-free club. Thank you. But before we sign out, I must educate and enlighten the entire world that Wisdom Class has put together a drug-free club that will be launched before the end of the year. And our strategy will be full-blown advocacy. And we will actually identify individuals who are addicts. We will identify individuals who are depressed, because our war is against drug abuse and prevention of suicide, and will support this group. So we need support from NGOs, international organizations, the government of the federal and state government. We need the support of the community, families, and individuals. Together, we can keep our nation free from drug. God bless you.
Thank you, and bye for now.